Howat from Next Best Picture. Dan, it is such a pleasure to talk with you today. I'm so excited
Thank
to
you very much.
hear.
The same.
Absolutely, I'm so excited to hear more about Frankenstein. Like so many of Guillermo's movies, this film is full of huge set pieces, bombastic action, but it also has so many intimate character moments. What were your initial conversations like with Guillermo for the visual style of Frankenstein?
No, it started, I think first time I heard about Frankenstein is when we shot Mimic for some many years ago. And he talked about, we are sitting in the chair somewhere. He's talking about his dream and he's talking about Frankenstein. And then Crimson Peak, he talked a little bit more about Frankenstein because that was a gothic movie. And that is going on. And then when we shot Nightmare Alley, he said, I think my next movie is going to be Frankenstein. So I start to read the book. So I read the book a couple of times and I spoke to him, and then he sent me the screenplay, and I was blown away about the way he's changed everything. I was like, and I should not be surprised because it's a Guillermo movie, I know him so well. So, it's, why not? And again, the way we talked about, we want to shoot this much wider compared to what we have done before. Much wider lenses, much bigger sets. We want to see all the sets, but in the same time, we use a telescope crane, so we want to go in on one shot, starting super wide angle, and went into a close-up of whatever actors. And of course, the challenge with that as a cinematographer is, you have to have all the lights outside the sets. And I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of that, and I think Guillermo is the same. We want the light to be outside, far away, because then you have a much more atmospheric feeling about light coming through the windows or whatever it's coming from. And I think the approach about shooting large format, like Alexa 65, and then shooting everything, we think we shot the 90% of the movie with a 24 millimeter, and that's the widest lens that have those days for the Alexa. But that's still a 24 millimeter, so when you're coming into a close-ups, it's not a super wide angle lens. It's a wide angle, but it's not crazy. And I think that's the beauty of shooting large format, because it works so well together, like super wide angle, the look of a wide angle, but it's not a wide angle. And we use that a lot. We use that all the time. And I think that was a difference between the other movies we have done together. It's less cutty. He's starting a lot of times very wide and coming into a close-up. Of course, as a cinematographer, it's a kind of a challenge, but you just have to, as you said, you figure that out, and then he's walking away.
Well, yeah. In addition to shooting so much wider than your previous collaborations,
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about camera movement, because the camera moves so precisely throughout Frankenstein. It's sweeping through these locations, like you said, so you can see these huge sets.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the way you and Guillermo thought about how and when to move the camera versus when to be still?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the camera is still ever. It's always moving. It's always moving. We shot, as I said, 90%, maybe more, with a 24 millimeter. And we, of course, that's so very complicated for the focus puller, because Doug Lavender is our focus puller. He's the best in the world. But the challenge about that is Guillermo's talking to the grips with a headset. So he's actually telling them, go up and down, go in and out, stop, go left and right. It's very much, he's doing, we talk about, him and me talk about what kind of equipment we should use. Should it be a techno crane or Scorpio crane or whatever, or Steadicam, because we're shooting everything on remote heads or Steadicam. We're never using dolly for anything. So the blocking we're doing a very rough blocking. A lot of times we don't do a full blocking, because then you said, let's shoot it. And of course, that's a challenge for everybody. But that's, again, when you're working together with so good people as we have on this, the whole technical crew is amazing. Even, in Toronto and in Scotland, the technical crew was amazing. So, let's shoot it. Let's do a rehearsal. Let's shoot the rehearsal. What can go wrong? And of course, everybody's getting into a panic. But it works really well. And that's, but he's talking to the camera move with the grips and the camera operators, because he knows where he wants to go, and he know where he wants to cut. And I think that's so specific for him because he's editing all the time. When we're setting a new setup, he's editing the previous scene we have done. So he's editing all the time. So he always knows where he wants to go and where he's coming from. And that's a big, big challenge for everybody. And again, we always pre-lighting the set. So, I know more or less. We're always talking about where's the master. We know that when we're starting because we're taking a wall away when we're studio, you take the walls away, put the crane there. So we always know where we are starting and we know more or less where we are going to end. And what's happening between there, that's a little bit in the beginning. Let's see what's happening. But he's a master, so it's fantastic. And it's, for me, it's a pleasure.
Well, and when you're approaching the story of Frankenstein, we know the story well. There's a massive juxtaposition between Victor and his creature. Did you have a different approach in the way you filmed Victor versus the creature?
I don't think we have it like approach. It's not like one is green, another blue, but we have, first time we see the monster, the creature, it's lit with very warm sunlight. We see him in the end of the bed, but he's a little bit like dull because we don't want to see exactly what it is. And then he's taking a couple of steps back and Victor's opening the blinders and the sunshine is coming into him. So we want to show the creature as beautiful as we could do. It's like a marmor statue. And we try to do that all the time. And we're shooting against the sun a lot of time. We're coming from, backlit the creature and we're shooting into a light in the studio. And Dennis, the visual effects supervisor, is changing that to a sunset or to a sun, whatever. Where Frankenstein is a little bit more like less beautiful light on him. But it's not like, we want to make it green and blue. We want to have to be blending into the same scene. But I think a lot of the time with the creature is we're shooting the creature more romantic and beautiful than him.
Well, Dan, last question before I let you go. You opened by talking about Mimic, right? Almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've worked together a number of times since.
Yeah.
How have you seen your working relationship evolve with Guillermo over the years, especially going from a film so long ago till now?
No, it's just coming back to your brother. It's coming back home. We are not seeing each other for some years, and then we are talking about we should. It's just because we have really the same. I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he has respect for me as well. But again, we have the same feeling and the taste about movie making. It cannot be good enough. There's only one way. That's the best way.
Well, the result speaks for itself. I can't wait for more people to see Frankenstein. Dan, thank you so much for your time today. I really
Hello,
appreciate
my
it.
name is Emma. I am with Next Best Picture. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Lovely to meet you, Emma. Lovely to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for your time today. I guess I would love to know a little bit about, before we dive into the world of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, your connection to Frankenstein as a whole. Do you remember either as a child diving into this book or at least seeing some of the films before?
Absolutely. I'm a huge romantic of the dark nature. And I grew up in the world of art and history. I certainly had read the book. I also grew up at a time where, Ken Russell's Gothic came out. There's lots of film references that I've looked at the past, and the paintings of Fuseli and Caspar David Friedrich and all of that world. And I love the Gothic world. And, every time there's so many iterations of it, and how do you keep looking at it in a fresh way is a big challenge. But I grew up on the dark, grim fairy tales as well, so anything with a heel being cut off or, some general bloody nature. But it's a language I share with Guillermo. My bookshelf, when we first met, I had the paintings of Goya, books on Joel Peter Witkin and that, and I'm probably less gruesome now. That's what happens when you get old. You get a bit softer. But there's a similar language, and I grew up in the world of opera that is also tremendously, based on that heightened theatrical language. So, it's a world I gravitate to naturally.
Yes. So your heart is in all of the dark madness lurking
Yeah, I mean,
about,
I
which
fall
I
in love.
love.
I fall in love with everything. If I do a robot movie, my job is to love that. Like,
Yes, absolutely. Well, I love hearing that, and I mean, what a perfect film to be able to dive into that world and to really hone in on that. Of course, you and Guillermo have previously worked together with Crimson Peak, and as I was watching Frankenstein, so much of that world kind of reminded me of Frankenstein, the gothic nature, just these lavish costumes that you so beautifully designed. Um, I was very curious as you got started on the work with this
yes.
film. Did you maybe have a similar mindset as to the work that you had done on Crimson Peak, just in terms of maybe the styles and type of outfits?
Well, the very first conversation I think was, "This is not Crimson Peak" from Guillermo.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
but also, it was sort of different period, and the leading thing was, how do I take the qualities from the novel, but especially Guillermo's script,
Mm-hmm.
and create the mood and tone that he set within that,
Mm-hmm.
the melancholy, the loneliness, the classical nature of it, and we looked, he definitely wanted, I don't want a sea of black top hats and Dickensian, he didn't want a Dickensian world, and he wanted an element that felt modern, and in a way, the beginning of Victor Frankenstein's life, his childhood within the world of the film, echoes more the neoclassical, the Age of Enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
of Mary Shelley's time. We look at that world of galvanization, and there's a different language. And then by Guillermo then setting it in the 1850s, you're into a more modern world. It's an industrial world. We have the Crimean War, surgery develops. So understanding, and I leave this behind at a certain point, but understanding the historical context allows you to sort of echo both worlds. So we did that. And then you're in the dream of it. Guillermo creates this amazing world, and we get to play with it and find the language within it. So, um, one of the challenging things was, because I'd read the novel and that you see it through that sort of 1818 period, or the 18th century earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've seen versions of Frankenstein done that just as much. As it's so fascinating to digress when you talk, somebody only talks about the Boris Karloff in the 1930s, or someone echoes the 18th century and Kenneth Branagh's. So everyone's got a different viewpoint of this
Mm-hmm.
thing. But this is Guillermo's version.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, how do we take all those qualities that are in the novel, that are in his script particularly, and echo that within the tone and mood of what we're doing, and how we dress people, and the environments they walk through, and the elements that Dan's lighting with, and all of that. So it takes on, this was all lit with candlelight, a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge in itself. How do I make those colors sing, but still have the dark qualities and tonal values that we need? And there was a huge amount of R&D of candles and fabrics and that, and it was
What
a whole
works?
yeah, and some of those things took months. Like the blue dress took months of working with colors. It wasn't a flat blue. It wasn't, you automatically gravitated to, oh, that's the cyan blue. And then we found it took all manner of blues to create that, and layering to get that intensity of color with candlelight.
Mm-hmm.
And some colors thrived under that, and some died. So there was a constant testing. Sometimes we shifted the color balance, with Mia's. There's a malachite gown that we wove and designed the textiles for, and then there's the velvet bodice that we hand marbled, and that had a different tonal quality outside to what it had inside. So you have to understand what everybody else is doing in this world, what Tamara is doing with production design, Dan with the lighting, and always go back to how your director's seeing things. And Guillermo's so generous. When you're on set, there's no excuse to not be informed by what he's doing and seeing the language he's building. So, you know, we echo that. That's my job. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. This is just such a playground. You have the historical
Yeah.
context, and then,
Yeah.
but it's a fantasy, it's a sci-fi,
Yeah.
it's Guillermo's world. So
Totally.
you just get to play with that.
Yeah, and we played a lot on, because nature untamed is sort of such a big motif within it. We have the human qualities, but we also have this role of nature in the film. And, that became our textile base,
Mm-hmm.
skin cells, blood cells, malachite, which echoed all of those X-ray forms in the blue dress that she wears. We've used
Yes.
hip bones and repeated all of that world. On the shore were all these fractal patterns, and very, almost sort of kaleidoscopic effect of textiles. And that garment we did through knitting, and that was a new technical challenge to
Wow.
knit a visual pattern as opposed to, and something that's very organic. And in the end, we were trying to do all these clever things using technology, and in the end, it was paint by numbers. So I had an amazing, long-suffering team that did that. Dedicated that shawl, which we started months out. The same with even the bridal dress. We had to get the silk balance right to support the movement and all the roles that needed to play. So it's understanding what's needed. And some of those dresses we started months and months out because the R&D took time. But I have an amazing team. They understand the language that they're doing. Guillermo comes in. We all see what we're doing and the path, and we explore around that. But, I have a team of alchemists, and that includes the tailors, the dyers, the breakdown artists. They're all part of the alchemy. And because they're aware of the language, they can all support that and offer things for that tonal place to happen.
hmm in through this conversation, of course, you were
Yeah.
talking about choosing these colors and kind of having to play with what hue shows up the best with the candlelight oftentimes. But I'm also just curious in deciding, I want a red color for this. I want this blue color, cerulean color for this. How do you decide which colors work in a world that maybe a lot of people will think it's mainly dark, it's mainly muted?
Yeah, well, that was the challenge because, of course, people expect Gothic sort of melodrama to be a dark tone and
Yes.
everything in black. And Guillermo mentioned, there's the love of Hammer horror, which explores color, Mario Brava, and all of that. So I did look at all of that at the beginning and saw how pushed the tones are, but they still manage this nightmarish quality.
Yeah.
The blue tones came from almost Mia's character, Elizabeth, is almost ever changing. She's as mercurial as a metamorphosis. She's fleeting.
hmm
Muse. She's, also, she's an amazing character, but sometimes she's almost representative of things. So the blue almost came from echoing the angel and religious imagery in the film from that point of view. And Victor's point of view, it's his first introduction to her. The red in Victor's apartment was, there's a lot of, Tamara did a wonderful job with her crew and the scene artists painting all those versions of red. And we have echo the spine of the creature on the table, and that blood red dress was sort of echoing that, and it links back to the mother. The flowers in her bonnet link to the coffin of the mother again. So
Yes.
always finding with Guillermo the repetition and echoing of things, because that's where his magic happens. The circles with the windows and the Medusa, the classical mythology, that's echoed in the father's costume, and I go on and on. We went down the rabbit hole.
Again, it's a great film to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, I have received the wrap. I just want to thank you so very much for your time. It's such a pleasure. I wish I could speak with you even longer.
There's a lot, but I'm sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you very
All
much.
right, let me give a little introduction. I'm speaking today with Mike Hill, the creature designer and I think prosthetic makeup design supervisor for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Amazing work. Did you work on both Frankenstein's monster and Mia Goth for this?
Yeah, I did both.
You did both. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's start with Frankenstein's monster. I was stunned to learn that Jacob Elordi didn't join this production until I think about 9 weeks before cameras rolled. And you had been working on preparing creature design for Andrew Garfield for months before that. Is that accurate?
That's actually very accurate, yeah. Yeah, we had Andrew for a while, about 8 months. And then I get the call from Guillermo saying that Andrew couldn't do the show anymore. And yet we were down to the wire. It was like 9 weeks, if not less. And so he gave me a list of actors that he was interested in perhaps being this thing. And the only one I wasn't fully aware of as much as the others was Jacob. But so what I wanted to do was watch this actor in interviews and stuff like that, so I could see what his real life mannerisms are like, and not some performance he was providing, so I could see into his eyes. And I texted Guillermo right away and said, "Oh man, this is our boy, because this guy ticks off all the boxes. If you think he can act, Guillermo, I think he looks the part." So yeah, and it was he is having Jacob come in. I'm sorry if I'm expanding on your question here, but having Jacob come in was a miracle. We needed a miracle, and we really got one. You know, he was the ideal creature.
Well, he's like 6'5", so I mean, for start,
exactly.
just from the start, that's if you're gonna make a larger than life creature, that's gonna help.
And that is true. And even though visually, you know, Guillermo could make someone taller, of course, on screen, it physically, it's like having a real like prop there and not a green stick. You know, you've really got a 6'5" creature in front of you, so I can't even reach the top of his head when I'm working. So yeah, he was ideal.
So had you already built suits fitted for Andrew that you had to retrofit to Jacob at this point?
Well, he was never suits. It was appliances, but no, none of them fit. None that was on Andrew could possibly fit Jacob. You know, no, because you're talking a 6-inch difference. You know.
Okay, so it's not a suit. It's this is all prosthetic appliances.
Correct.
So head to toe, basically walk me through how this is applied then for Jacob Elordi.
In total, I think it's 42 appliances on his head and body. So if we're doing the full makeup, it's 10 hours. And what we'll normally do, we'll start with the legs, get the legs on, get the front of the chest and arms on, work our way up, then get to the point where Jacob can stand up so we can get to his back. Then we do his back of legs. And then he'll sit back in the chair, and then we'll do the head and neck. So it's normally around 10 hours to do that full makeup. Because what you're actually dealing with, Will, is that you're doing a paint job every day. You're basically doing a new portrait every day. Because a lot of this is painting on because I kept the appliances very thin and slight. Because Guillermo and I didn't want ugly lines. We wanted something refined like a Porsche. You know, this is Frankenstein's first attempt at a creature, so it's not correct. But he still has high goals. You know, he wasn't trying to make a Volkswagen. He was trying to make a Porsche, something nice and clean and regal and above man. So, yeah, and Jacob Elordi was all of that. Anyway, yes, so it was 42 appliances, exactly. So, and some of our call times, Will, were like, Jesus, you know, sometimes our call time was 10 p.m. So, try and go sleep at 6 p.m., knowing you got to be up at 10 p.m. and then work through the entire night till we shoot the next day. But it was a lot tougher on Jacob than he was on us because we're applying the makeup, so we're busy and frantically doing what we love to do. Yeah, and he could be 24 hours. It wouldn't matter to me because I'm in the moment. But to sit in that chair takes a special kind of skill and commitment, and Jacob had all of that. You know, it takes a certain zen to be able to sit in that chair for 10 hours. I couldn't do it well. I know that. No.
That's all you do it to others, right?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, I couldn't do it. There's no way. Yeah.
So I want to circle back to something else you said, because that's, you know, it was interesting to me that Jacob obviously is a very handsome man underneath, but the Frankenstein's monster he depicts is, it is also much more handsome than I expected, and I think much more so we've seen in other adaptations, even with his scarring. You were saying that the design was to make him, I guess, superior to humans. So tell me a little bit more about this decision to make kind of a handsome Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, well, you know, there was certainly never no decision to make him a handsome guy. I just, you know, extended his bone structure and tightened his skin like Mary Shelley described. And then I added that geometric pattern to his face. But I wasn't trying to make him handsome. It's just Jacob showing through, basically. You know, no, really. Because one of the things, Will, when I was looking at him is he has a very strong chin. And here's one I made earlier. Yeah, no. He has a very strong chin. So, that helps with the makeup, because this is always a problem area here. You know, it's, when I say problem, I mean constant touch-ups all day long from eating and drinking and talking and laughing and whatever else. So that was good. But as soon as I saw his face, I thought, oh, that's really good because he's got this strong chin. So I really think that the looks are becoming, the handsomeness is becoming because of Jacob under there. You know, if that was somebody else under there, it wouldn't have had the same effect, you know. But when I'm making an angular man on a man who's already angular, it's going to have some kind of good looking effects, I guess. Yeah. It's very hard for me to see that side of it, Will, because I'm just looking at the paint and the structure, you know. I don't see that side of it, but a lot of people do.
What about the hair, the long stringy hair you gave him? First off, what kind of wig did you create for that in general? And secondly, how did you decide to you and Guillermo decide to give him these long locks, basically?
Well, in the novel, Mary Shelley describes his hair as lustrous. So we always considered that he had long hair. Of the period, somebody who's living wild, the hair's going to grow out. But there's also a very romantic quality to having that long hair. And it also really gave us a sense of time then, because we could go from the bald baby, the adolescent, the toddler, walking around with his stubble, then the teenager when his hair's growing in, and then the full developed adult human who's realizing the world ain't too good. So the hair was also a great way to show this baby developing to become a man, so to speak. And the wigs, they were obviously human hair wigs, and we put the main bulk of the hair is brown, but at the back there's a dark patch of almost black, and then under one side here we have a bank of blonde grayish hair to show that this thing came from different scalps. Yeah,
that's a great detail.
Yeah, oh thanks. Yeah, it was. Just to show that this was different soldiers who'd been used to put this head together.
Now, the coloration of his skin, how did you decide on this kind of milky white color to go with?
It was all to do with, like, you look in the movie, you've got, the main thing I wanted to do with this creature, there's two things that I wanted to achieve. Well, the first one was, didn't want it to look like a car accident, because a lot of the Frankenstein creatures, they look like someone who's been repaired, right? And, you just saw that, you'd go, oh, shit, this guy's been in some kind of explosion and they pieced him back together. But I designed it so that he had these geometric shapes, so that when you saw him, your initial impression is, oh, no, this is man-made. Somebody planned this. This is not a repair job. This is a brand new man he's made. This has been made from scratch, kind of thing. It's almost a paint by numbers with the colors and things. So that's what I was trying to do, was to show that this thing was geometric. It was not an accident. It was really man-made and almost made from a guy. He'd planned it out. And then the colors came along with that. I figured that he's like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. And then as the movie goes on, he gets longer hair, so he's turning into a moth again. But finally, when the sun's in his face, he's back to being the butterfly all over again. But so I put those color hues on because I just like that effect that some marbles and alabaster statues and things like that, they have this kind of use to it. So I put purples and yellows and blues, which I typically put on a creature like this. But I knew that Guillermo would allow me to do it that way because he thinks outside the box too. And this creature wouldn't really belong in any other director's movie. Kind of only belongs in Guillermo's, And then, and back to what I said, the first point was to not make it look like an accident. And my second thing was I really wanted it, Will, to look like he stepped out of the 1800s. Didn't want to make a modern day looking monster that with all modern techniques looking, that screams 2025. I wanted something that if you looked at it, thought, oh, that looks like it would have walked out of an 1855 textbook. And that was the point of it. So that's why, that was cool, trying to get, just how they design it to look vintage, I guess, and I think the colors helped it with that. There was a naivety to them, like a wooden doll or something with a little bit of dry brush paint on there. It felt a lot like that, All
right, so I got one more question about him before I ask about Mia Goth, which is, you mentioned that he has like 40 different pieces. It's a very active performance. He's climbing, he's jumping, he's fighting, he's exposed to the elements. How did you maintain the integrity of all these attachments when he's in so many different environments?
We didn't have that much breakdown during the day at all. I mean, the pieces were sculpted. I sculpted them very slim on him for that reason. I mean, the main bulk he's got on him is probably here, his traps. The neck muscles here, and built those up considerably. When I say considerably, it's only 1/4 of an inch, but it does add a lot on a physique, and then maybe even less on the deltoids and the shoulders, just to broaden them a little. So I don't. His movement was not hindered in any way. I designed it that way. When he first came into my shop, I had him stripped down and to see what physical shape he was in, and he was moving for me. And I immediately called Guillermo and said, hey, these big pieces I was going to do, I don't feel we need to do them with Jacob because he's in such swimmers, he looks like a swimmer body, you know?
Yeah.
With a bit of shading and contouring, we can really make him pop his muscles. So let's not cover them up. Let's do the mildest, surges that Frankenstein could have done. Keep it nice and sleek. So it's mainly shoulders, chest, thighs, a back piece, nothing extremely heavy. Maybe the legs only. I've got, huge appliances on.
So Mia Goth, after we saw it at Telluride, there were several people like, no, that's not her. The illusion is so complete. So first off, my first question is, was that always planned to be Mia Goth by Guillermo, or was that something that was decided once you were pretty much into production?
No, I knew from day one that Mia was going to be playing that character also, and I believe she was going to play 3 characters at first.
Really?
And it got down to 2, yeah. And what I did for that character is I just figured that I would try to make Mia look slightly more like Oscar. So I did Oscar's frown, I sculpted onto Mia. Obviously I softened it a lot because it's a lady. And I straightened the bridge of her nose just to, basically, this is a very tricky one. And thanks for mentioning it, Will, because I only complained yesterday that no one ever mentions Mia's makeup. I did, so thank you.
Yeah.
Literally, the irony of that is unreal, because yesterday I said, no one ever mentions Mia. Because a lot of people don't notice it. That's the problem.
No. It's so good. Most people just assume it's another actress.
Yeah. So with her, that was what I did. It was almost like a forehead and a nose piece that we put on her with new eyebrows that were emphasized a little bit more than they should be, literally because to get away from Mia, who has hardly any eyebrows, to hit up the quality of looking like Oscar by making her eyebrows thicker and darker,
Well, is there anyone else other than, I know there's lots of work here and there on all kinds of characters, gore, et cetera, but are there any other characters besides Jacob and Mia that
my main characters were Jacob and Mia, and then we did the wounds for the old man when he gets attacked by the wolves, but as you said, we did things like that puppet in the auditorium. I guess that's not makeup, comes in the makeup. But they were the 2 leads that I got to do, and I was extremely grateful as well.
Oh, did you do Christoph Waltz's the back of his head when he falls?
We put it all over a statue. He was a dummy. Boom. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so gross.
Yeah, I know, it's good, right? He was a good character, wasn't he? So I'm assuming you watched the movie, right, Will?
Oh yeah.
And you enjoyed it.
I did, and I was just blown away by your work, man. I've been excited to talk to you about this since then. So
that's very good.
Yeah, well, before we wrap, is there like one detail that you're particularly proud of that you have with either Mia or Jacob that you haven't really gotten to single out people?
Well, I think I never really thought about it, but you brought to yourself. I'm really proud of the Mia makeup, and the reason being that nobody notices it.
Yeah, and
that's the art of Transformers makeup. The creature from frame 1, is a makeup effect.
Yeah,
the change a person is a lot trickier, especially a female as well. You seem to know a lot about makeup and stuff, Will, and you know that once it starts to be additive, it can get Botox there. So it was tricky to do the Mia, but so I'm proud that people didn't notice it. And the detail on the creature, I would say, the only detail I like that no one ever mentioned is I put a hat, a window here for his hat, like it's like I wanted his fresh golden there. What I was representing was an old padlock that has a little brass thing that you move and you open the lock. So that was my in here reference. You'd never know it in the film. And if you look real close in the film, along that edge of that underneath is always dried blood, because I figured his heart was always bleeding. So I just that little detail in there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's hard to pick up on, but I put it there. It makes me feel better.
No, that's fantastic. Well, listen, I feel very confident you're going to get an Oscar nomination for this work,
wonderful.
Yeah, and might even win. We'll see. It's stellar work. I can't wait for more people to see it. And best of luck this season, man. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
Thanks again for spotting Mia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yes, hello. This is Daniel Howat from Next Best Picture.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
I am doing so well. Thank you so much for your time talking to me about Frankenstein today. I'm such a huge admirer of your work, so this is really wonderful. I understand that Guillermo brought you on board 2 years before production even began. So, as you read the screenplay and had those initial conversations with him about the project, what initially stood out to you? What musical concepts came to your mind?
I knew that I had to write a few pieces before the shooting, so I started writing waltzes, and because we are in 1830 or something, and we know we are in the romantic era, but I didn't want to go into the romantic type of music that actually I've never very much liked. The music I like the most is before the 19th century and after the 19th century. For some reason, I'm closer to the 20th and the 17th or 18th or even before. Now, the romantic era is not something that I'm crazy about musically. I like the post-romantics, like Mahler so I early on, I think we got rid of that with Guillermo, that the music shouldn't be romantic because it would be one layer too much on top of the romantic heroes that you see on screen, because they are romantic heroes. Mention was made by Guillermo of Baroque music, but again, I thought that was not relevant. But I did keep in the score that I wrote some crumbles of Baroque music, which is ornamentation or ritardendos, this kind of things, but ostinatos. But I had to wait to see the film to really understand what was coming. And I think the first thing that was really important was to find the creature's sound. What is the sound of the creature? And you can't give it away right away at the beginning of the film, which is kind of scary and violent. But when the opportunity comes a bit later, I develop a sound that we've heard at the very opening, just before the creature appears. We hear a solo violin, very pure, played by a wonderful Norwegian young violinist, Elordi Kemsing. She has a beautiful, pure sound and beautiful, delicate interpretation, full of taste and elegance. And as we go deeper in the film, it becomes the sound of the creature. Few notes, but just the sound of this, the most fragile instrument, the most virtuoso instrument, the violin, to play the sound of this huge monster, this huge creature. And I think that was the beginning of the task that we started with.
Yeah, as you develop the theme for the creature, of course, in Frankenstein, we all know there's this juxtaposition between Victor and his creature. How did you build themes for Victor as well to either complement or oppose the creature's theme?
Well, the Victor's theme is more not more structured, I would say. The creature is more of a motif, while Victor's theme is more elaborate, because we follow him for all the first part of the film. We know in this flashback we learn who he is, and he's very educated. He learns a craft. He becomes a genius at his craft. It had to be elaborate, while the creature had to be very specific, short, and to the point, and very sensitive, and you should feel it right away. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Guillermo also infuses all of his work with a sense of spirituality, and I think that's especially on display in Frankenstein. I know there were church organs involved here. How else did you imbue this music with some sense of Gothic spirituality?
I wouldn't say Gothic, but of course he's Mexican. We know how much Baroque era is important in South America and Central America. And I was raised a Catholic like he was. I was a choir boy, you know. So I've lived with that for for a long time, since my childhood. But also my mother is Orthodox, so I also heard as a child the Greek songs and the icons, and so I have all this in my system already. And so when we see the Dark Angel, this wood sculpture in Victor's visions, it's all connected to this the magic of religion, you know, the magic thought of religion, and how imagination can create so many artifacts through the years. I mean, since prehistory, men have and women have thrown in caves, and until the mid 15th century or 16th century, painting was only about God. So when you know that, you approach religion a bit differently, I guess, and spirituality.
Yeah, the act of creation is such a theme throughout Frankenstein.
Of course, he's creating. He's like the ultimate artist. He's creating a piece of art. He's dreamed of doing that. You know, being the ultimate surgeon and create a son, a brother that he would love.
Right. And then, of course, it's also about how that creation can take on a life of its own beyond what you intended or imagined. As an artist yourself, you know, you've created so many iconic works. Do you relate to this idea of art taking on a life of its own after you release it into the world?
Yes, I do. I do it very. I mean, I've experienced very recently, and in a very humble way. You know, just being at the, you know, at the bakery store or in a supermarket, and somebody coming to you and saying, "Oh, are you Mr. Desplat? Oh, I've listened to this music of you, and it helped me go through this experience." Or I've loved this because I was in my car in 1995, and I was playing this when I was going to an exam, or any the most mundane and intimate things. And that when you realize that the music you've created has gone by capillarity into the system of many human beings, and that's the most beautiful thing you can hear. It's not, I mean, it's not playing in a concert and being happy because I'm being applauded. That's great, of course, it's fantastic. But that, I remember the first song I wrote in 1987 that was a hit, and I went to my garage to fix my car, and one of the mechanics was singing the song. That's the most beautiful thing you can dream of, you know? That what came out of your head went through different mysterious waves into the intimate life of people. It's beautiful, the most beautiful reward.
Well, your work has certainly done that for my life as well. And Frankenstein is also just remarkable. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your work.
My name is Emma. I'm with Next Best Picture. Hi, Tamara. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
I'm very excited to dive into this fantastical world and all of these sets and creations that have come from it. But I guess before we dive into this version of Frankenstein, I would love to know a little bit about your connection to this story. Maybe the first time you remember discovering Frankenstein in whatever form that may have been.
You know, I guess as a kid, I watched like the 1930s Frankenstein at some point because it definitely resonated with me. And I was probably really frightened by it. I remember Young Frankenstein for sure. I tried to rewatch that while we were early on this film.
just for shits and giggles. And I could not find, for the life of me, a copy of it that I could rent or buy or anything.
Uh-huh.
But like all those Frankensteins, all the Frankenstein lore, all those things are so, in your head, they're
Yeah.
embedded. The 1960s Frankenstein, and then the Robert De Niro Frankenstein, which when I saw that, I mean, I was older, but I can't remember what year that came out, but I was floored by that because it was such a different telling of the story, and the sympathy for the creature was like, oh, okay, I think that's what we're making more. But again, this is Guillermo, so we're making, a Guillermo movie. So I knew it would be very different, and I knew his creature would be beautiful and emotional.
He loves his monsters and his creatures, as we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that I do know.
No, I love that. I love that you have kind of always had this connection, and I guess who would have thought that it would lead to you getting to work on that?
I knew Guillermo wanted to make Frankenstein. I've known that for many years.
Mhm.
I didn't know like how embedded it was in him. Like he saw the first Frankenstein movie when he was 7. He was just talking about this and read the book when he was 11. And I think that's what ignited him to become first a creature designer, an artist,
Yeah.
then a film director and a storyteller. Those stories are Frankenstein is such an iconic story. And I, of course, read the novel when I was much younger.
Mhm.
And then I reread it when I first started the movie, and I was just like, oh, wow, this is some 18-year-old girl in the 1800s writing this. Wow, Mary Shelley, like, thank you for this gift that you've given us, because it is really a truly remarkable story. Like,
Yeah.
and the genius of writing that at that time when galvanism was actually, they were actually experimenting with moving dead bodies or dead body parts. I mean, that stuff was real. And she was
Mhm.
writing about it in Frankenstein. She actually wrote about it before she witnessed galvanization at the museum at the University of Edinburgh or Glasgow.
Mhm.
I can't remember which. So she was already ahead of her time. Anyways, remarkable that she wrote that.
Go women, as usual.
Oh, women. And then and to Guillermo, who just respects women so much. And to me, Elizabeth is like the most brilliant character and most real and honest. And she's not in the film a lot, but whatever she's in
She
it,
has the impact.
so important. And kudos to Guillermo for embracing, understanding women and
Mhm.
the essence of womankind. I think there's something to that he allows that and embraces that and lets that into himself emotionally. Like
Mhm.
it's okay to cry like a woman.
Right. Yes, I fully agree with your sentiment there.
Not that that has anything to do with the design of the film.
That's okay.
But
We're
it
gonna
has
get to it.
everything to do with the design of the
Yes. Yes. I mean, your flourishes are all over this film. I know that you and Guillermo have teamed up a number of times already in the past. I'm sure it's always so fun to be able to work on one of his films. Getting into Frankenstein, and I guess just some of those initial concepts and maybe even conversations that the two of you and other collaborators had on this. What was the image that was in mind for this film?
I really didn't have an image, and I didn't have. And that's the wonderful thing about Guillermo is he lets people do their own system of. For me, it's research because I come from a more historical, reality-based approach. Like I have to for Frankenstein's lab, I wanted to know that some of what we were going to be building could actually be built and how it would be built, and understand what a steam engine is and what an Arctic ship is of the 1800s. An Arctic ship, not just any wooden ship that's a sailing vessel, but an Arctic ship in particular. And so I spent a lot of time at the very beginning, before I really got to spend time with Guillermo, doing research and visual references and thinking about it in my own terms, so I could when I got together with Guillermo, I could share what I found, what excited me, and gauge his reaction. So we very much speak in visuals. So I'll show him, like I had a reference for the mill house of a medieval house that's I think it's in Chechnya. It's actually a museum now. And I was like, this is cool. And I had a number of different references from all sorts of different places. it's gauge how he reacts. So it's really a visual language. It's a language of, I show you an image, he shows me an image, we go to a museum together. When we went scouting in Scotland was the first time we got to be together day after day. And of course, for both of us, that was like, well, this is our film coming together. Cobblestones in Edinburgh, those wet cobblestones are our patina.
I can
Marble
imagine.
and those walls in Gosford House where we shot a lot of the Frankenstein villa, that's our patina. The crumbling monuments, the towers that we saw, that we based the water tower on, that, Guy Davis, who was with us, we were lucky to have Guy with us at the time, our concept illustrator, who had actually done some early on illustrations before I even started. Like Guillermo likes to, before he's even writing, he's doing concept stuff, and he'll work with somebody like Guy to do stuff. So when I start, even though they're, maybe not what we end up with, they're a starting point. So they're a visual language that's there, which is handy as a designer. I don't know if a lot of directors do that, but it's a great thing if a director, just before they hire a production designer, get together, either draw some stuff yourself or do some research, or get a concept illustrator to throw something together. It's really it's a really great way to start with this visual language.
Speak the same visual language. As you and I both have very similar backgrounds here, I can imagine that, a centerpiece for this film, it's seen in the trailer, is the laboratory and seeing the creature come alive. And I have to imagine, maybe I'm assuming incorrectly, that was perhaps the most important set for you, or, how would you classify that setting for this film? And I guess if you had pressure on yourself in order to really make it come alive, just like the creature.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It was like I was part Frankenstein, making that lab come alive. Because every day I'd go and I'm like, okay, we need a little bit more of this. And then take a photo of this corner. Guillermo, I think we should do some moss here. Guillermo and I got obsessed with moss, layers of leaves and pigeon shit that we, scenically made. And the lab was huge. To me, every set is important, even the small ones. And you can get lost in the big. And I like to, I've learned early on in my career, you also need to focus on the little things that you build. So it's a real combination. So I have my thumbs in everything, but the lab itself, so many moving parts and so many different looks. It starts out abandoned water tower. It goes faded water tower into lab. It goes into lab. It goes into working lab. It goes into exploding lab. It goes into lab in a ruin, although we only see the lobby of the building as a ruin. But so many different times of years, seasons, time passing, evolutions of Victor's character, trying to imbue the place with a sense of fever dream madness as he creates the creature, the blood and the guts of it, with the level of, while he's creating the creature, the body parts that we were strewing about and buckets of blood. And,
Yes.
and this giant vortex in the middle of it that was almost sci-fi. I feel like some people react to it that way. And it was something that we needed to tell the story, but this was really something in Guillermo's wheelhouse of a circle going into a vortex, and then it goes through the tower. Designing that was super exciting. And you're designing, when I'm designing, I'm also designing for the visual effects that will come after it, because obviously our vortex, we built maybe 10 feet of it, and then it was hitting the studio ceiling. So in the biggest studio we could get at the time for what we needed for the lab. Guillermo, I think working with him, he always pushes to go bigger. And it's automatic. He'll walk on a set, we'll lay out even just some sticks to say, okay, here's the lab set. And he's like, 10 feet more. I'm like, okay, I knew you were going to say that. I already moved it 10 feet. But, he likes this big space. And I think the lab needed to be monumental. That crazy Medusa head that Guillermo had it, as the monster. Yeah, there she is. As a misunderstood monster, and there's all sorts of themes that Guillermo has for that, for himself. But I think for the audience, he wants you to make your own stories, which is really nice. That he allows that, and he allows me as a production designer and Kate as a costume designer to make our own stories and backgrounds to what we're creating. Yeah, I mean, I can't. The lab, it was like it was so handcrafted too. You know, we sculpted all the stone walls. I mean, obviously we built them out of styrofoam with covered with plaster. You know, it was a team of carpenters. We had to start with the ceiling of the lab with the vortex and tiling that on the ground, and then lifted it up and then built the risers. So just the way logistically we built it. And the Medusa head had to roll out. It actually rolled out so they could get the camera crane in on a
Amazing.
giant on these giant wheeled devices. So, you know,
What a playhouse.
it was very much a playhouse. It was very much a playhouse.
I wish I could talk to you for far, far longer than the time I've been given, but I just want to say it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Congratulations on just
Thank
really
you.
beautiful work on this film, and hopefully we'll be able to chat again sometime
Yeah.
soon.